So I'm set to continue working on pouring these voids until they're full, but I'm pouring them a little bit at a time so it doesn't bake, because if I pour it too thick in there, that could happen. I sealed the other side with some of this nice wide Gorilla tape. That's going to leave a texture on the other side that if I pour clear over, that texture will disappear, and I don't have to probably don't have to go back and sand it down, which is good, because if you're going to sand it down after you've sealed it, then you've got to really clean it good before you can pour it again. And in my smaller places, I use these little guys, these pipettes. You can order like 100 at a time, and they're super cheap, so I can put them in there. I'll usually use 2 at a time if I have lots of little cracks to pour, because I'll squeeze it and put it down in there after I've mixed it with a color, and it will slowly soak up in there. And if I've got 2 going at the same time, then I can keep working and get to use my epoxy before, while I still am in my working time window, before it starts to set up. And so I will pull up some of the epoxy, and then if I've got just some little places, you know, I can just pour it in these little cracks. And what I do with some of my cracks, like these, some of these thinner ones here, what I'll do is I'll chisel out or use a Dremel tool and make that void a little bit wider at the top, so I can get more in there, because it's going to keep soaking down into that crack. So I'm going to get it all in there very carefully, and then I'm going to think it's full, and then it's going to settle down in there, and then I'll have to go back and do it again after it dries up some and hardens, and probably 3 or 4 times to get it, you know, to soak down, because I want it to go down on the bottom and on these outside edges here where the cracks go along the edge. I want that color to show on the outside of my table, because it's just, well, I think it's really pretty that way. So these work really good for getting into those little cracks. And, you know, like these that are really tiny, unless you carve them out bigger, the epoxy is going to tend to lay on either side of it and not soak down into it. So I usually just do the bigger voids, and if they're small but I still want to use them, then I will kind of carve them out with chisels, sculpting tools, or a Dremel tool. So there you go.